Good morning, everyone. At the risk of coming across very aggressive, I'm going to have to make a clarification this morning. A commenter on my recent video response to comments by djsatane. I don't know how to say your username. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Sort of suggested that I don't understand the fact that, Russia, a larger country, invaded Ukraine, a smaller country, and that's wrong. It seems that people are not capable of kind of a nuanced conversation without first, making an acknowledgement that like the sky is blue. So, I'm talking about things beyond that. And, multiple things can be true at the same time. I guess that's necessary to point out. And so I want to address some of your comments, but I guess I'll have to start with the obvious acknowledgements here. Yes, Vladimir Putin bad, Adolf Hitler bad. You said in your comments later on something about you were likening this to what the Nazis did, and you said perhaps I don't understand this either. Like, I don't know, I guess you think somehow because I'm trying to talk about things beyond the obvious, beyond the thing that the news is just beating into everybody day after day, that I don't understand that, the Holocaust was a bad thing and that it was perpetrated by people with, absolutely insane intentions and evil intentions. So, it's a little frustrating, I have to say. The thing is, having a one-track mind, not being able to talk about things beyond the obvious is a problem. And, I have a number of personal philosophies that I've developed over time. I've talked about them a little bit on this channel, and I'm going to repeat them because I think it's important. One thing is, multiple things can be true at the same time. And not everyone who appears or would have you believe that they have pure intentions does. And there are ways to manipulate things on the geopolitical stage in order to gain differential advantage or gain even resources without actually having to go to war. And there are a lot of people who know how to manipulate things to suggest that all of the other players on the global stage are pure as the driven snow, and that this is all the evil act of one country or one man. I think is very, very naive. And the other thing is, as I've said before, that I think is very important to acknowledge, that it is important to be aware of the degree to which one can verify all of the things that they claim to know or that are being asserted by other people that they should accept as fact. And one should be aware that information especially about foreign places, is largely curated to you. And I think it's a good idea to be aware that those curating that information to you may have a bias, may have an agenda, and that in fact they often do. So does that mean that I doubt that the invasion of Ukraine is wrong and evil and lopsided, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No, it does not. I don't dispute that. But again, multiple things can be true at the same time. What's funny, though, is this person, djsatane, or however you say your username, and I don't mean anything, I don't mean to be insulting by that. It's just hard to know, right? Obviously, usernames are kind of a pain because they may be gobbledygook, they may be, someone trying to put their initials and then their last name together in a word, or it may be something from another language. It's hard to know, right? But this user, just did the same thing that I was talking about in my video without even acknowledging they're doing it, really. the person said, you're ignoring the fact that Russia is invading the Ukraine for resources, and that if I look at any given country, I can find a percentage of people who want something different than the majority of that country, essentially, that maybe they want to be ruled by a different government, which I don't think is exactly what's operative here in the Ukraine. It's not exactly that you just say, hey, we wish we were ruled by a different government. However, anyway, the person says, I could find this percentage of people in any given country, and that's my fucking point. So yes, right. And then they said, but never mind this. Just, this is my point. You're hand waving them away. And it's easy for you to do that, isn't it? And that is also my point. See, my point is that I think it's disingenuous to just hand wave them away, because what you're doing is you're automatically assuming that that whatever they want, their desires, are somehow illegitimate, and they don't have a right to their will, to see their will carried out. And I'm not saying that they do, but the thing is, neither of us fucking knows that, and history is rife with small groups of people who are oppressed by larger groups of people. So who gets the acknowledgments? Who gets, and how do they acquire this? How do they acquire the sympathy of the rest of the world? Who gets the acknowledgments in the future, and who doesn't? Who is hand waved away into the scrap heap of human irrelevance? And unless you were actually able to go, this is the thing about that. One thing you don't get to do is you don't get to determine that you understand these people and what their wishes are, and what they're actually rooted in, and how valid that is, unless you were to actually, you'd have to spend probably multiple years on the ground. You'd have to spend time with people. You'd have to, and in a real genuine way, like you'd have to have an honest desire to understand the motives of people and their history and the things that have, been passed down through their generations, the personal family tragedies, the lore, just all of it, to ever be able to somehow be able to make a determination on the validity of their will, of their goals, their desires. And even then, I think that would probably be a tall fucking order, because you're not them. Hello, yes. Next day, Mike here. I was doing some editing on this video, and I wanted to make a couple of comments, so I may intersperse them throughout. What I wanted to say here is, when it comes to this, you're saying, never mind this and never mind these people. And I could find such a population in any group of people, but this is the population we need to be concerned with. It feels rather arbitrary, I have to say. And I think that's really my point here, is you've got a very arbitrary determination of who deserves your acknowledgement, who deserves your sympathy, and who should deserve my sympathy too, and anyone else's sympathy. And I would submit to you that the arbitrary nature of this determination on your part actually isn't as arbitrary as it appears, because it's probably what has been, again, curated to you as being the important thing by the people that provide the information on the box on the wall, whether that box on the wall is a large screen television or a computer screen or whatever. And I try not to allow other people to determine my opinions for me. And again, multiple things can be true at the same time. And so I can consider the plight of the Ukrainian people en masse, and I can consider the plight of smaller groups of people who have their own narratives, their own will, and ought to have their own agency probably. And further to that, one of my other observations, I suppose, personal observations, is that People believe what they believe because they have been told to. And there's a distinction there between just saying people believe what they've been told, and saying people believe what they believe because they have been told to. And that distinction is not just people believe what they're told. The distinction is there to add the intentionality of what it is they're told, that curation that I mentioned before, right? So people believe what they believe because they've been told to is a little bit more deliberate on the part of the tellers, I guess, is my point. And at the risk, again, of sounding very pithy and asserting how you've come to believe what you believe, I do think it would be a good idea for you to consider that. Do I believe what I believe? In a sort of a pure organic way, or have I been the subject of propaganda and biased reporting and people with agendas, having a desire for me to believe a certain way and having as part of their platform an agenda to drive the narrative. I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll engage in a little bit of thought experiment and a little bit of introspection and see if what I'm saying just might have some ring true, if there might be some truth to what I'm saying here. And this is why, of course, being an active participant in your own news gathering or information gathering is so important. Because part of the problem with the bias and the curation here is a lot of it is narrative control by omission. So it's not so much just what are they telling you? What are they choosing to focus on? What slant or bias are they coming from? But what are they not talking about? And what are they telling you you should not even look into? What are they telling you is dangerous misinformation or something along those lines, right? So, they do it by commission, they do it by omission, but they also do it by corralling you with certain language to dissuade you from looking into certain things. And what this all amounts to, in my estimation, when it comes to this idea of being so dismissive of a certain group of people that you don't really actually know anything about, if you're honest with yourself, is this is really kind of this is dismissiveness from the comfort of ignorance, in my opinion. And so my whole point, aside from all the other stuff that you just completely skimmed over because Russia bad, right? You're not capable, it seems. And, I'm sorry if this comes off as pithy, but it appears that you're not capable of having the discussions about the economic ramifications to, all kinds of people of war, and the fact that, yes, the military industrial complex, if you want to call it that, or just the defense contractors, all the people who are involved, see opportunity here. This is financial opportunity, and when that happens, it's coming at someone's expense, and it's generally speaking at the expense of the people who are in the aid countries, those donating, and of course the people in the country that's being invaded. And I find it interesting that so many people who are anti-capitalist, I see it on their Facebook pages, right? They're anti-capitalists, and then of course they have the Ukraine flag, and you can see from their posts that they have nothing but support for the Ukraine people, and that's fine. I have nothing against that. Again, this is not my dispute. This is not anything that I was challenging. My point, however, is that these same anti-capitalists don't have word one to say about arguably one of the ugliest potential forms of capitalism, and that is war profiteering. People who actually have in their business model the death of other people. And you can say, if you like, that, and I would agree that there are probably virtuous people involved in the arms contractors, et cetera, et cetera. However, obviously, by the same token, that industry has within it the potential for the worst among us in terms of businessmen and capitalists, because the profit of their model depends on the existence of war and killing itself. And so it's very funny to think of, to be an anti-capitalist in a normal sense when, most businesses, they create value and they only record profits if they generate value for someone else, and it's a value exchange. And I would just separate that from the sort of corporatism that we actually do have nowadays, the lobbying and all of the special deals given and stuff like that to big business. I'm talking about a pure free market where there's no fuckery between business and government, where the only government involvement in business would be just regulation for consumer protection and nothing else. No special deals, no special tax breaks, no regulation that ultimately is a form of protectionism and all of that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about a pure free market. But again, the anti-capitalists who are big on sending all kinds of aid to Ukraine, they just don't. They're just mute suddenly on capitalism in what I think is potentially one of the ugliest potential forms of capitalism that can be. And again, that's war profiteering. And so, you can say, Russia's stated their reasons behind the invasion. You can say they're lying, I guess, and you can say that it's actually just for resources. It's got nothing to do with any of the NATO encroachment or anything that they claim, which, fair enough. Like, I don't know and you don't know actually in an ultimate sense. But I think it's a bit much in the face of what's actually happening to suggest that no one else is interested in the resources of the Ukraine. No one else. There couldn't be any desire on the part of other actors to take advantage of this situation for their own gain. Because Russia bad. So you're just not capable of at least engaging in that argument, because you can't see past step one. And all I'm saying is I feel like I am capable of that. I am capable of saying, yeah, let's set aside for the moment the atrocities that are happening right now, because it doesn't change it, right? The fact that I'm having a conversation about something beyond the boots on the ground doesn't change that. It doesn't change what's happening. I'm not detracting from it. I'm attempting to add something, but anyway. So, it's similar to the point that I was trying to make in the last video, response to comments. And that is, you said, you're basically saying that because I apparently don't understand that, the Russia, the larger country, blah, 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 that other statements that I make are very ignorant. I think you said we don't understand these people comment by me was very ignorant. And it's just ironic to me because, again, with the hand waving away, first you said, but never mind this. Now you say that we don't understand these people. The comment is very ignorant because, right, that comment is ignorant because Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's a bad thing. Right, so only one thing can be true. Only one thing, we're only capable of focusing on one thing at a time. And so don't let the irony be lost that the person who's saying that, we don't understand these people, which is a statement of an acknowledgement of ignorance, is ignorant. And this is why I say this is dismissiveness from the comfort of ignorance. And obviously, ignorant can have several connotations here. The variant I'm using here is to say that which we actually don't know anything about, not a statement of attitude, right? You know, people will say that someone's being ignorant. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you are ignorant, and so am I. And you ought to at least be aware of that and not be so dismissive of other human beings. One thing that is often a good idea to do is to just turn that inward and just think, what if that were me? Be selfish, I guess, if that's what's necessary to get you to be a little bit more generous with the plight of other human beings. And again, I say this, yes, in the light of a large conflict that is a wrong or bad or whatever you want to say, and the acknowledgement that those people are suffering a plight. But I'm capable. It's like, you know, which child do you love the most? Any parent will tell you, that's not how my love is not limited like this. It's just different. Try practicing that, maybe. What I would submit to you as ignorant is to hand wave people away without at least acknowledging that you haven't got the faintest fucking clue what their actual desires are, their history, their reasoning behind whatever it is that might be behind their wishes, to have their life reflect something, to be governed by a different body, whatever it is. And it could very well be that in the final analysis, after much honest investigation and soul searching, that you come to the conclusion that nope, these people are just wrong. That they're malicious and malevolent and evil for wanting what they want. But the point is, and obviously I don't think that is the case, the vast majority of people, they might be misguided. You might come to that conclusion as well. There's been plenty of propaganda to go around throughout human history, but you know, the propaganda, it's so funny. You're capable of, you said something about that Russia invaded Ukraine with false pretenses and false propaganda that the country was full of Nazis. If you don't realize how much you are propagandized to, I cannot help you. And I'm not even talking about this, right? I'm not talking about this conflict. I'm just talking about in general. Like how, and I'm not saying this to you directly because I don't know. I don't know if you know how much you're propagandized to. However, I'm just saying in general, how dumb would you have to be not to know that your government is full of shit? And I can say that pretty much universally, right? Because their objectives are not your objectives. And the sooner people come to realize this, the better off we'll all be. But these are the actual conversations that I'm trying to have. That's the funny thing. You know, most of the conversations I have, even if I use a specific example, they're about the 60,000 or 80,000 foot view or whatever you want to say. I'm not really necessarily wanting to weigh into very specific situations, because part of the reason for that is, of course, because again, they are so nuanced, and I'm aware and acknowledge that there are many things that I don't know. And sometimes it feels like I'm the only one in the room who has that personal acknowledgement that I don't know everything, and that the information that I do have is largely curated to me, and that there may be, you know, biases and you know, other objectives that are baked into the narrative that I'm being fed. So it's very difficult to come to what I would deem to be a nuanced position that hopefully is fairly reflective of the nature of what's actually happening. But, you know, this idea, you know, it's sort of like, again, you didn't say it directly, but it is kind of funny to me that, you know, you point out the propaganda of the Russian government without kind of acknowledging that this is the nature of our existence. And that's the point that I'm trying to make when I say this is why you can't have a government. Of course you can, because we do, but this is what you get. you get, I mean, the other thing is too, yeah, you get invasions. You get resource stealing. Some of it's overt, some of it's fucking covert. I'm actually more worried about the covert than I am the overt, because at least the overt, you can recognize it for what it is, and you can maybe mobilize as a global community, which did not happen, interestingly enough. Further to my point about whether or not Ukraine could actually sort of win this conflict, right? Yeah, I'm more worried about the covert resource stealing. But again, you know, it comes down to, for me, the fact that wherever you're writing from, you've probably got somewhere somebody making acknowledgements. That's if they're generous enough to acknowledge that at some point, somewhere along the line, somebody was, where you live, stole resources from somebody else, and likely that included the very land that you're seated on. And you know, this goes further again to my complaints about the acknowledgements here in British Columbia when it comes to different universities and other meeting halls where people might gather, and they do an acknowledgement before they begin that we're taking place on the unceded territory of the such and such nation or whatever. Like, that's human history. And again, first of all, give it back. If I can give it back or shut up is sort of my take on it. But deeper. Let's go. Can we fucking go deeper, right? For once, and look at the fact that is our situation. That is how we got here. And instead of just repeating the same mistakes, can we actually have an honest look at this and try to figure out what is it within us? Are we destined for this? Are we doomed to this? And if so, if this is human nature and we're doomed to this kind of behavior, then how can we really, from a position of living on land that was stolen from someone else, actually be so virtuous and stand on the soapbox and criticize someone else who's doing the same thing while enjoying the fruits of similar conquests? You know, ultimately, I'm of the opinion, I get it, this all sounds very barbed, but I'm trying to have a real conversation here. And I'll be honest with you, so far it's been fruitless. I get it. It's a fool's errand to try to talk about anything in a real complex way, because, the media is very full of just, the virtue signaling of, Trump bad, Putin bad, Hitler bad, abortion good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this speaks to another observation of mine, by the way, that where the media used to report information, they now speak in conclusions. And that's something that I've watched happen in my lifetime. They speak in conclusions. They're telling you the takeaway that they want you to leave with. And again, people believe what they believe, often because they've been told to. We're not honest about things. I guess that's my biggest gripe. We're not honest about things. We're not honest. And we don't really have real conversations. We have, especially nowadays with, the sort of cancel culture, dogpiling and all of that, we just don't have honest conversations. We don't really create a safe space for people to be real. What we do is we create a space for people to grandstand and virtue signal and act holier than thou. And I always say to my wife, follow that guy around for a few days. You'll find out something completely different. You might take longer, but for most people, I don't think it would take longer than to actually be a fly on a wall for a couple of days and on most people who jump up on their soapbox and declare themselves to be virtuous, either by, explicitly or implied, of course, in the way they treat and judge others. You'll find that those people aren't quite so high and mighty after all. So anyway, I guess that's my kind of rant for today. Jeff, if that's your name, I think it is, Jeff H. It mentioned something about when he watches my videos, he's envious of the place where I am, and I really appreciate that, because I'm envious of it too, and yet I'm experiencing it every day. And I guess what I mean to say is that I have a lot of gratitude. I love it here. I said in a comment that I often go to these mountain places where I hike to and go to, and I stand on a mountain. I look at this incredible vista in front of me, a deep valley fringed by glaciers up on the top, and it's dead silent except for the sound of large creeks in the valley floor, and the crescendo and decrescendo the sound because of the air currents that bring the sound to your ears or sort of take it away. And I'll thank my parents out loud for having brought us here when they did. We moved here in the 70s when I was a kid, and my parents are both gone, but I'm full of gratitude for them having brought us here, because I do love it here. And so I'll probably make another video next time I'm up in the bush, because that's where the real beauty is, and it's not far from here. That's one other thing I'm so grateful for, is it doesn't take me long in the truck to be up in what feels at least like the middle of nowhere, where there is nobody, and and I can have peace and quiet for an entire day, and I can just engage in photography, exploration, quiet introspection. I spend a lot of time just sitting and thinking, and I think about these kind of topics, but mostly what I think about is family stuff, family history, my parents, my puppy dog, who it's almost been a whole year now since we lost him, which has been devastating. I knew the personal vlog time. I knew that it was going to be bad. I spent the last year and a half really just intentionally soaking it all in with him, intentionally enjoying the experience of being with him. It was an incredibly special relationship. I can't put it into words. I've never experienced this type of relationship with anyone else, which includes humans or animals. It was unique, and my wife always used to say, he adores you. She could tell by the way we would just look at each other, and he would stare at me. And she wasn't wrong. I kind of acknowledge that now, and I know why. It was because I was dedicated to him. I was devoted to his care. I was tuned in, as much as I could possibly be, to his needs, and to just acknowledging him every moment that, anytime I walked past him, I didn't do it without acknowledging him in some way, sitting down with him, or just saying his name and making eye contact, or, a nice stroke or something. Like, I never, and I'm so thankful now that I never missed the opportunity for a tummy rub, when I would come in for lunch, or any time he would be laying on the deck and I was coming in or out of the house. I never missed the opportunity to go and be with him and stuff like that. So, I think about him a lot, because I'm still conflicted too. We did euthanize him during a very acute, and I think possibly fatal potential like stomach torsion, something different. We had to rush him. He's had overnight stays in an animal hospital and a couple of things like that. This was different, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, we've had scares, but this was different than anything we've ever experienced. And, you know, I was afraid he wasn't going to survive it, and he was in an unprecedented amount of distress. And it was just sort of one of those things where he was a lab Great Dane, you know, large breed. He was 11, and he already had a lot of joint problems. He could barely lay down. I was already getting ready to engineer and build a dog escalator, you know, or elevator of some sort, an elevated motorized platform or something to get him up on the deck, because we really had to coax him up the stairs. Poor boy was in a lot of pain, and that's with all the, you know, the sort of high-end vitamins, you know, that they advertise. You know, now our dog runs around like crazy, like a puppy. Yeah, not so much. We gave him a lot of like gelatin, bone broth type stuff, and you know, very expensive dog food. And you know, I mean, it just is what it is. His joints were really causing him grief. And that night, I'll be honest, I was not equipped. I was not equipped for what was happening. I was trying to wind down the shop. It was literally like a week and a half before the shop was supposed to close, and I was under an incredible amount of stress trying to finish up all the jobs that were in there. Also anticipating shutting down the shop. Like, it was just so much. I just only had so much bandwidth, and here he was in an incredible amount of pain. He made noises he'd never made before. He looked at me and made these really distressed barks. He was like saying, do something. He depended on me, you know, he really depended on me. And so we did take him to, and this was at like 11:30 or something at night on a Friday. Like, it was just the worst timing. In some ways, I feel like he needed to go, and he took advantage of my weakness because he knew he could get me to dispatch him. I know that sounds weird, but maybe that's the way I'm trying to cope with it, although I'm not coping with it well anyway. I'm full of guilt. So, and I guess that's what I'm saying, you know, is that having him euthanized, like, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's not right to expect perfection in that regard, because how can you be perfect? How do you know exactly when the right time is? It's very difficult to know. I talked to someone about this, and I said, I'm kind of filled with guilt about euthanizing him. And he said, oh, what? Do you think you did it too soon, or you think you did it too late? And I said, oh, probably too soon. He said, you can never do it too soon for them. We always hold on too long for us. And, you know, it was kind of him to say, I think, because I think he was trying to take the burden off of me. He could see it, right? Anyway, those are the things that I think about when I go into the bush. But also sometimes these things, although I try not to, because it kind of spoils the experience. So I might make a video in the future, soon, the near future, from the bush. And maybe I'll try to talk about other things than this, but probably by then someone else will make some comments. Instead of asking for clarification or asking my opinion on something, just say, you know, you're probably ignorant about this. You probably didn't understand that the German invasion of Poland in 1939 was a bad thing. And, you know, which is what this commenter said, essentially. I mean, if you're upset that I got pithy in this video, just read your comment again and just ask yourself, you know, if you didn't just receive it in kind, right? So anyway, I don't mean anything disparaging by any of it necessarily. Like, I don't know you. And I think that's part of the problem with this, right? I'm trying to have a conversation about things that go beyond the obvious and talk about the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is this is a wealth transfer, whether you like it or not. And whether it's part of the intent, whether it's part of the plan, or it's just a result, we still at some point have to acknowledge that these things don't actually enrich the average person, but they do enrich someone. And perhaps you don't want to have that conversation, and that's fine. Like, if you want to be on the one track of, like, Vladimir Putin bad, and the only thing that matters is the current conflict and this binary conversation, that's fine. But don't come on here and start disparaging me and saying that I don't understand that the German invasion of Poland was a bad thing or something like that. The one thing I'll end this by saying this. Maybe this doesn't come across this way. I am here trying to have a conversation in good faith. If there's something that you think I don't understand, ask me some questions. Or at least try to understand what I'm saying from what I do say. Don't start assuming that you said don't fool yourself. Well, you don't even, this is mind reading now. Now you're on the level of mind reading by saying don't fool yourself, because you're talking about something that's not in evidence. I've never said what I think ultimately all of the objectives of Vladimir Putin are. You never asked me. So you decided for yourself that because I want to talk about peripheral issues around the obvious, that there are innocent people being slaughtered in a country, which is happening all over the place. And I notice you don't acknowledge any of those. And, I didn't do the whataboutism of saying, well, you're not prefacing everything by talking about every conflict on the planet, right? Because I understand that people can have nuanced conversations about things. And I'm keenly interested, especially when someone actually starts talking about the reality on the ground. And that is the way we govern ourselves is probably at the root of the majority of these things. It's the only thing that actually allows, I won't, to quote Joe Biden, anyway, not because I lost my train of thought, but because this is a whole new can of worms. And I'm already having trouble enough getting people to engage in the conversation that I'm talking about without diverting things to, you don't understand what the Ukrainian people actually want, when I never disputed that. You don't understand that the Russian invasion of the Ukraine is a bad thing, which I never said. And even all the way down to the extremes of, you don't understand that the Holocaust was bad. Get out of here with that, Like, that's not what we're doing here. I'm sure there are plenty of channels you can go to if you want to engage in a constant bitch session about Vladimir Putin or Adolf Hitler. I mean, those are the guys, that everybody uses as their example of bad faith, malevolent, dictators and awful authoritarians. So I'm sure you can find like-minded people there. If you want to engage in the actual conversation, then just understand I'm talking about something else. Just because it involves that doesn't mean that this isn't a hierarchy. I'm not putting it above that. And that's even at the risk of not acknowledging that it's potential that it could be worse than that. I use the example of it's not kind to be cheerleading, a scrawny kid who's trying to beat up the school bully, who's twice his size or whatever, and try to convince them that they can be successful, that they can be victorious, that it's not kind to do that. I'm open to the potential here that these self-same people pushed this person to the bully, that they pushed the bully to the other person, that they orchestrated the whole thing for the sheer joy of watching the pummeling, and or more importantly, because they wanted to, take both their lunch money afterwards or something. So, and I'm not saying, don't get it twisted. Like, if you're not capable of understanding that I'm saying that I don't know, but I'm open to the possibility, because the opportunity is there, and governments are fucking liars, and people have ulterior motives, and people have bias. I'm open to the possibility that that there are forces at play here who play with global politics like a grand chessboard, and either try to manipulate things in the beginning to their ends, or take an advantage of a situation, and with the idea that how can we make this serve our purposes. And they say it out loud anyway, you know, never let a good crisis go to waste, etc., etc. So again, I'll end this because I know it's way too long and there's probably no one left here. But if you're capable of engaging in those kind of conversations, then you're more than welcome. And I have more time now than I ever used to actually respond to comments. I miss the old YouTube format where they had response videos. I would be making response videos to other people all the time now if that were still here. I miss it. It's a great way to engage, I think. Because comment to video and even comment to comment, I don't think is that great. I mean, I think ultimately probably the best is some form of an actual in-person debate. Now, I wouldn't engage in a debate necessarily. I say that now, maybe I would like it, but I don't think I would like it. I'm more interested in an actual conversation. So an informal debate, I guess, is kind of what a conversation is, right? Where people just have a conversation. You know, a video conference style, right? Because I think with comments, comment to comment and comment to video and video to comment and all that, there's just too many opportunities for people to be misunderstood. You know, if someone said that to me, if we were having a conversation and someone said, well, you know, do you not realize that Russia invaded the Ukraine for resources, and you know, this is a horrible, you know, they're committing war atrocities like daily? I would say, well, no, don't get me wrong. Right? I would have dispatched that really quickly, easily, because of the format. I could have easily said, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that anything that Vladimir Putin is doing is righteous and justifiable, and that it's anything other than an actual war crime by definition. I'm talking about the peripherals to this, and the fact that there are other people with their own motives who are taking advantage of a situation, and that ultimately that it doesn't actually serve even the Ukrainian people, and it certainly doesn't serve probably the rest of us. It serves a very small minority of people at the upper echelons. But I could have easily dispatched with that, right? So anyway, that's enough, eh? Have a good day.